Out in the C-list cold back in Monteceto, the self-styled Queen of California was battling an all too familiar problem.
She said she didn't think it was love. We think she engineered it all. That she was Meghan.
When you're the King of England, when you are King Charles, you have to plan your funeral out way ahead of time.
He will crawl back to the United Kingdom, damaged and humiliated, and she will be in California with 2 kids.
I just don't think they're going to be welcomed with open arms back in the UK because Meghan Markle has said she was miserable there. Prince Harry said he couldn't bring his kids back to the UK. It wouldn't be safe for them. And then we see the guy going around like ringing doorbells in broad daylight in random neighborhoods.
But worse are the persistent rumours that she's not a mum and never has been.
Now, where things start to get really interesting, and I know some of you are about to get angry.
The hush dropped over Clarence House like a velvet guillotine. Just after midnight, candles still burning, King Charles allegedly summoned 2 veteran solicitors and a single trusted aide for what one insider calls the most explosive family meeting since Megxit.
When you're the King of England, when you are King Charles, you have to plan your funeral out way ahead of time, right? You can't leave wiggle room for mistakes or disasters. Everything is planned to a T, like it was with Queen Elizabeth II.
According to the leak, the king's tone was steady but frost cold. He wanted an airtight codicil drafted that would fence off a staggering £1 billion worth of private holdings. The crown jewels of his personal fortune, not the public purse from ever landing in Prince Harry's hands. That figure covers centuries-old art, discreet property in the British countryside, and a slice of Lancaster revenue few even knew was liquid.
Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, they have not been a part of the royal family in years. They left at the beginning of 2020, 5 years ago. Meghan Markle has crapped on the royal family. She's shanked them. She's accused them of racism. Harry has done tell-all books, sit-downs with Oprah. They've done 6-part docuseries. They continue to use their families for fame and fortune and continue to stab them in the back.
Allegedly, Charles pushed the papers forward, tapped the top line and said, "This is not vengeance, it's protection." Word of the deal crawled through the palace corridors before dawn, a conditional clause triggered only if Harry detonates one more public broadside against the monarchy. In blunt terms, the codicil would freeze Harry out entirely, redirecting the assets straight into trusts for William's children and a contingency humanitarian fund the king has nursed for decades.
Yeah. I supported those 2 when they left. I can't then imagine, 12 hours later you land in another country because you don't want press involvement in your life, where you sign a $112 million deal with Spotify and basically spend the rest of your existence only surviving by slagging off the very thing you don't want to be part of.
Courtiers who overheard fragments along the carpeted hallways describe a sudden chill, staff whispering that Charles finally reached his breaking point, that the late Queen's patience no longer lives in him. One veteran footman allegedly muttered that the codicil felt like a velvet-covered sledgehammer. Sources claim Charles's decision was sparked by those soul-rattling disclosures from Lady Elizabeth Anson, the late Queen's own cousin, who revealed Her Majesty's private doubts about Meghan's motives and Harry's loyalty.
The royal family's position on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle has significantly hardened following the shock beyond the grave revelations from the late Queen Elizabeth, exposed to the world by her cousin, Lady Elizabeth Anson.
A wave of panic followed inside what insiders call the furnace room, the tight circle of financial strategists who guard the monarchy's private wealth. They advised the king that if another tell-all erupts, the family's fiscal legacy could become legal confetti. Charles, ever the gardener tending fragile roots, chose containment over confrontation, but chose it with steel. Yet even amid that high-stakes drafting session, the king reportedly paused, eyes glazing with regret, and asked whether the clause could be reversed if Harry found his way home. Lawyers answered yes, technically, practically. That path narrows with each tabloid thunderclap. The conditional nature of the codicil became the perfect royal paradox, an open door that slams the second Harry pushes it.
She can't get away with her behaviour. I think there should be something that you have been so rude to the Queen.
By dawn's first glow over the mall, only a handful of officials knew the full text, but palace staff could sense something tectonic had shifted. The usual breakfast clatter felt hushed, and aides exchanged looks as if they had witnessed the forging of a secret weapon. They had, and now, every Sussex headline, every Monteceto move, becomes a potential trigger. But if you think that late-night signature was the endgame, think again, because the real tinderbox ignited when William learned exactly how this fortune could vanish into thin air. Whispers say the lightning bolt actually struck 2 evenings earlier, during what should have been a routine briefing in the white drawing room, antique clocks ticking, rain pattering against the sash windows, when a senior aide dropped a discreet manila folder onto Charles's lap. Inside lay a full transcript of those jaw-dropping Lady Elizabeth Anson interviews.
That actually it deserves some sort of punishment. Prison if possible. I really mean it. I don't mean it as a joke. But when we've heard all the things she said to the Queen and how she's behaved.
The late Queen lamenting Meghan's secrecy, calling Harry besotted and weak, admitting she feared the marriage was engineered. One courtier swears Charles read the first page, pressed his thumb hard into the margin, and muttered, "So the truth finally walks the corridors." That moment, insiders claim, cracked something long splintering. For months, Charles clung to the belief that drawing a financial line would signal hostility, that time and quiet persuasion might coax Harry back. But here, in black and white, was confirmation that even his mother, unflappable, diplomatic to the end, had seen the danger brewing. A fresh wave of anger rose, not fiery but glacial. Charles apparently realized every generational lesson about duty could be undone if he kept leaving the vault door ajar. Fuel poured on the flames when the head of royal communications reported a new Sussex project had been filmed in Monteceto, anonymous sit-downs with Hollywood friends discussing structural cruelty inside palace walls.
No, not the shocking revelation that her rip-off as ever tea bags are supplied by a company that sells them for a third of the price. That's bad enough.
No release date yet, but Netflix executives allegedly labeled it the sequel. Charles's knuckles turned white. Staff overheard him say they would force their grievance into eternity. That line, people close to him insist, was the tipping point. He stood, dismissed the room, and ordered the finance team to prepare options by nightfall. Behind closed doors, debate raged. Could the king isolate Harry's slice without detonating public outrage? Lawyers argued yes, because we're talking about strictly private assets, not the crown estate. To the outside world, the heritage coffers would look untouched. But to Harry, it would be a banishment measured in pounds rather than miles. One senior counselor called it financial quarantine, designed to protect the monarchy from what he termed reputational contagion. Meanwhile, Charles's personal secretary reached out to William at Adelaide Cottage, briefing him on the looming clampdown. Sources claim William's response was icy calm. If it shields the institution, do it. Yet allies say William urged one final safeguard: make the clause conditional, give Harry a narrow escape route, no matter how unlikely reconciliation seemed. Charles agreed, and with that compromise, the last obstacle fell.
Prince Harry is expected to walk side by side with his brother, who will then be king, at the forefront of the procession from Westminster Abbey through the streets of London. Now, the Sussexes, Harry and Meghan, will also be invited to take part in the family vigil during the lying in state period at Westminster Hall.
By dusk, the blueprint was settled, a 2-page codicil, a private addendum, a time bomb disguised as filial mercy. But palace minds still needed to solve one thorny riddle. Exactly how does royal wealth flow, and where can a future king lawfully dam the river without flooding the whole realm? That forensic money trail becomes the next arena, and it is nowhere near as straightforward as the public assumes. Most folks picture the royal bank account as one shimmering pot of gold under Buckingham Palace. Wave a scepter and coins spill out. Reality? It is a maze of locked rooms, each holding a different key, and King Charles just switched half the locks. First comes the Crown Estate, worth tens of billions on paper but technically owned by the nation. Charles only gets a yearly slice called the Sovereign Grant. That pool is untouchable, forever outside the codicil. Next sits the Duchy of Cornwall, traditionally feeding the heir. William now steers that ship, meaning Harry lost access the moment Charles took the throne. But the real intrigue hides in a quieter vault. The Duchy of Lancaster, a centuries-old portfolio of farms, urban rentals, and blue-chip equities that pour private income straight into the monarch's pocket. That, alongside discreet art pieces, Scottish acreage, and ancestral jewelry, never itemized for public eyes, is where lawyers found room to wield the scalpel.
Arrangements have reportedly been made for Archie, 6, and Lilibet, 4, to attend the funeral service with their parents and to take part in a big way.
According to one finance mole, last month auditors quietly recolored asset ledgers. Any property earmarked for future charitable endowments went green. Holdings pre-tagged for William's children went blue, but the column once labeled discretionary descendant funds simply vanished. That column, the source claims, was Harry's theoretical cut, wiped clean. The numbers themselves remain hidden, yet analysts estimate the harvest could crest £1 billion once you include low-profile shares in tech, hidden far beyond the pomp of St. James's. And crucially, because the Lancaster cash is the sovereign's personal revenue, Charles can apportion or withhold it at will. No parliamentary vote, no headlines, just a signature and a fireproof envelope in the Privy Purse safe. How can he sidestep inheritance laws? The codicil does not disinherit Harry outright. It redirects assets into an irrevocable trust for public projects unless specified family members meet conditions of continued loyalty. That single phrase, sources say, is the dagger wrapped in silk. If Harry keeps to private life, the trust could later swing partially in his favor. If he launches another media blitz, the assets default forever to William's line and a climate initiative Charles is rumored to cherish more than Balmoral. Down in the accounting offices, calculators hummed while aides whispered about spiritual déjà vu.
Just when the difficult Duchess wanted all the talk of her fake baby bumps to fade away, along came a so-called friend to turbocharge the conspiracy theories.
Queen Victoria once ring-fenced jewels from an errant son in almost the same fashion. History repeating, but this time under the glare of 24-hour news. One senior fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants allegedly quipped, "They have built a moat with spreadsheets." And the fallout? Monteceto contacts claim Harry's stateside legal team received a courtesy call. No details, just a warning that adjustments were being finalized. Harry reportedly paced the garden, phone to ear, asking if the rumor threatened the children's future security. The answer he got was maddeningly coy. That depends on future conduct. With the river of money now diverted, attention shifted to the dam keeper himself, Prince William, whose steel-gloved strategy would decide exactly when those floodgates slam shut. William's allies swear the prince never raises his voice, but on the night he heard about the codicil, the temperature in Adelaide Cottage dropped 10 degrees. One courtier describes a silence so sharp you could slice it, followed by William tapping 3 times on the desk, a signal his private secretary knows well, assemble the crisis circle. Within the hour, seasoned aides, legal counsel, and a discreet former intelligence officer gathered around a kitchen table still cluttered with Charlotte's art supplies. William, tea untouched, outlined a plan as meticulous as any military campaign. First objective, preserve institutional dignity. Second, ensure the monarchy never again finds itself blindsided by a Sussex surprise. Third, keep his own fingerprints light. Let the structures, not the man, deliver the blow.
Now the trolls have gone into overdrive with their firm belief that non-mother Meg was never pregnant, and the childless Sussexes continue to subject the world to an extraordinary hoax.
What emerged is now whispered as the Steel Glove Protocol. Step 1, already in motion, involves a dormant titles bill quietly drafted under the late Queen but never deployed. William ordered updated language that could, at a moment's notice, recommend deprivation of courtesy styles for any family member who markets royal status while harming the Crown's reputation. Parliament would still need to debate, but insiders say sympathetic peers have agreed to fast-track if the prince ever signals go. Step 2 is more psychological. A calibrated silence. No counter-interviews, no leaks rebutting Sussex claims. William believes the absence of his voice magnifies the gravity of Harry's choice. Each public complaint echoes in a vacuum, sounding less like whistleblowing and more like echo chamber grievance. Yet the most chilling element hides in what one advisor calls the contingency dossier. Compiled over 3 relentless weeks, it chronicles every post-Megxit commercial venture, every podcast barb, every line of spare flagged by palace fact-checkers as misleading. Friends insist William has no appetite for revenge, but he refuses to be ambushed again. If Harry files suit over inheritance, the dossier can be deployed in court to demonstrate a pattern of self-inflicted estrangement, a preemptive shield against accusations of spiteful exclusion. Aides say Catherine supports the protocol wholeheartedly, though she urged one humane clause. If Harry seeks private reconciliation, the door must remain ajar. William agreed, but with a caveat: apologies must be delivered face-to-face. No cameras, no ghostwriters. A slim path, yet still a path. Even seasoned palace watchers were stunned by William's cool precision. One equerry likened him to an ice sculptor carving out consequences. Another, more blunt, said, "The prince just taught a masterclass in silent warfare." But strategy on paper is only as strong as the moment it meets ceremony, and the next public ceremony already looms.
Archie and Lilibet. I understand they are in the line of succession. They might be a long ways down. I think it's a little murky if they should be. You know, there's a lot of rumors and conspiracies about the baby, and when we saw that baby bump in the hospital room, it looked a little bit dicey.
Funeral planners have folded William's steel glove into the choreography, mapping pew positions and processional routes that could relegate the Sussexes to a visual exile on the most watched day of the century. That seating chart is now locked in a safe beside the codicil, waiting for a day everyone hopes never comes. They are calling it Operation Mene Bridge, but inside the palace war room, aides joke it feels more like Operation Minefield, because every step of King Charles's future funeral procession now doubles as a trigger for that secret fortune lockdown. Picture it, the monarch's flag-draped coffin leaving Westminster Abbey, crowds lining the mall, trumpets cutting the October air, an ancient pageant rehearsed down to the minute. Yet tucked among the black ink timetables sits one crimson page marked "if necessary." On that sheet, lawyers have penciled the exact second the codicil activates. When the hearse doors close, any Sussex challenge still pending will be deemed hostile, and the £1 billion vault slams shut forever. It is morbidly poetic, inheritance sealed at the very moment the world mourns. Ceremonial planners went further. They redesigned the Abbey seating so Harry and Meghan can be placed 2 full rows behind the working royals, just out of the camera's primary frame. One insider quipped that the broadcasters would need a zoom lens and a prayer to catch their faces. Behind that decision lies cold strategy. If the couple arrive with tension in their eyes, viewers see stoic royals, not Sussex side glances. Even the carriage route has a contingency. Should Harry attempt any unscripted interaction with protesters or press, security ushers will gently steer him to a fallback motorcade, sidestepping the royal cortege entirely, exile by choreography. Word of these war plans leaked to Monteceto within days. Sources close to Meghan say she was incandescent, pacing the patio, furious that a moment of global grief could be engineered to sideline her brand. Her response? Allegedly a late-night Zoom with a pair of California-based power attorneys famed for contesting Hollywood estates.
Okay, I've heard from a lot of pregnant women the last few weeks. They're like, the last thing I want to do when I'm about to give birth is like twerk and drop it low like I'm in a freaking Snoop Dogg video, okay? But that's what Meghan Markle wanted to do in the hospital room. Also, that IV looked a little interesting.
Meghan wants language on the record that any codicil signed during emotional duress might be challenged. One lawyer supposedly floated the nuclear option, file a caveat against probate, before the king is even laid to rest. Courtiers got wind of that scenario and quietly scripted a countermeasure. If a legal warning lands during the mourning period, an immediate background briefing will drop, highlighting charitable clauses meant for British veterans and climate projects, painting any challenge as an assault on national good. In hushed meetings, Charles as master of the household admits the optics are brutal. Still, the plan stands. Duty first, he insists. Legacy second. Forgiveness if we are lucky. Outside, tourists snap photos of the palace facade, unaware that behind those stately windows staff are mapping escape routes, litigation timelines, and silent ultimatums all layered onto a state funeral blueprint. Yet even as these contingencies lock into place, a fresh ripple reaches London. Meghan has begun assembling a stateside war room of her own, complete with crisis PR, brand strategists, and a documentary crew reportedly sniffing for the ultimate royal confrontation finale. If that Monteceto chess move materializes, the palace's carefully laid funeral files could ignite long before any bell tolls. Across the Atlantic, the Sussex compound flickered with midnight light. Neighbors say the security flood lamps clicked on, the iron gates rolled open, and a cavalcade of luxury SUVs slipped inside. In the back seat of the lead vehicle sat Meghan, phone in one hand, a spiral notebook in the other, already sketching what insiders now call her California chess move. Within half an hour, the Monteceto kitchen transformed into a war room. A crisis communications guru flew up from Los Angeles, 2 entertainment attorneys patched in from Malibu, and a silver-tongued litigator, famous for clawing record settlements out of Silicon Valley breakups, dialed from his Napa vineyard. The topic on every screen: how to flip Charles's codicil into a public sympathy windfall before the ink even dries.
Okay, Archie and Lilibet have been sequestered away in the mansion. Maybe Meghan Markle's the new Dee Dee Blanchard.
First order of business: control the narrative. The PR lead proposed framing the codicil as emotional retaliation, insisting Meghan release an empathetic statement praising Charles's environmental legacy, while quietly leaking that she prays love will one day heal these financial walls. The term financial walls became the keyword, tested by their data team for optimum TikTok resonance. Meghan allegedly loved it. People hate walls, she said, yet pushed for punchier language. She wants the world feeling she and Harry were shoved to the perimeter like unwanted extras in their own origin story. Second play, legal choke point. The Napa litigator outlined a preemptive probate caveat, a filing that could freeze estate distribution for months under California reciprocity statutes. He explained the optics. Sussex is positioned as merely seeking clarity, not cash, wielding says-nothing phrases like due diligence and lawful transparency. Meghan scribbled starbursts around those words, already envisioning them quoted in glossy magazines. But the lawyer's caveat came with risk: file too early, and the British tabloids brand them grave robbers. File too late, and the codicil locks forever. Clock ticking, stakes soaring. Third tier, content capture. Netflix's non-fiction unit, still hungry after Spare's global splash, has staff on standby. Rumor has it they want a verite special charting Meghan's fight for fairness against ancient monarchy machinery. A junior producer was dispatched to scout a discreet rental house in Santa Ynez, neutral ground where Meghan could film confessional segments without paparazzi drones buzzing overhead. Meanwhile, drone operators rehearsed aerial sweeps of the Sussex estate, aiming to capture Meghan strolling the rose garden, pensive, dignified, rehearsing lines about forgiveness and generational healing, all perfectly lit for dawn. Yet even as cameras were penciled in, Harry paced a different loop. Friends say he roamed the backyard, thumbed through childhood photos, asked a royal aide turned confidant whether reconciliation was still possible. The response he got: Charles's door stays open, but only if Harry closes the Netflix one first.
Right, the kids are gonna grow up and realize, oh my God, we were royals? We were royals this whole time and he didn't tell us? The kids are gonna go to King Charles' funeral and be like, we could have been living in a palace, having parades through the street, you assholes. But the kids are going to be a part of it
That ultimatum, sources claim, set off the couple's first real shouting match in months. Harry begging caution, Meghan insisting momentum. By sunrise, the war room dispersed, NDA signed, draft statements queued. Meghan watched the last SUV roll out, then whispered to an aide, "They forgot I tell stories for a living, this one just writes itself." But the instant her chess pieces slid forward, news reached Westminster that Parliament might be readying its own countermove, a legislative sledgehammer aimed squarely at the Sussex brand. Westminster has seen its share of late-night plotting, but veteran doorkeepers swear they have never heard whispers travel this fast. Past midnight in Committee Room 14, a cross-party clutch of peers convened over steaming teapots and a single stark agenda: how to yank the Sussex titles with surgical speed. If Monteceto launches an inheritance fight, the draft legislation already exists. An almost forgotten titles deprivation bill first floated during the early turbulence of Megxit, yet until now it sat gathering dust in a parliamentary drawer. Tonight, aides fanned photocopies across the table, each page stamped urgent in red ink. One seasoned baroness reportedly tapped the margin and murmured, "We pray we never use it, but we must be ready." Support is surging in the shadows. A fresh not-for-release poll commissioned by an influential think tank shows public backing for title removal has soared to its highest level since Spare hit the shelves. Voters who once shrugged now see the potential court battle as the final straw. The poll's most chilling figure, nearly 2/3 say they would applaud Parliament stepping in to protect national dignity if Harry sues the Crown over private money. Those numbers were slipped under Downing Street doors before dawn, and the Prime Minister's office, sources claim, replied with a single line, "Keep us informed." Enter Marcus Doyle, a backbench firebrand known for torching scandals on the House floor. Insiders reveal Doyle has compiled a dossier of undisclosed Sussex-adjacent donors, Hollywood executives, tech investors, and one mysterious hedge fund magnate who, rumor has it, bankrolled Meghan's production slate. Doyle plans to read those names into Hansard if the inheritance caveat appears, forcing transparency with parliamentary privilege's legal shield. One whip describes it as political nitroglycerin. The minute he speaks, the Sussexes lose their shine. They become just another lobbying outfit with a family feud. Even lords who typically defend royal discretion now mutter about precedent. They remember 1937 when Edward VIII's link to Wallace forced a constitutional scissor. History, they say, cannot repeat through streamed confessionals and trending hashtags. One elderly Viscount put it bluntly as he folded the draft bill: "If they trade the Crown's aura for clicks, they forfeit the aura." Word of Westminster's siege plan reached Monteceto by afternoon. Meghan's crisis team reportedly gasped at the prospect. Titles stripped would torpedo brand Sussex overnight. Yet one advisor tried to spin it. "If Parliament attacks, we become the underdogs." Harry Torn phoned a former equerry who served his grandfather. The guidance came soft but firm. No court fight, no titles bill. Simple equation, but simplicity rarely reigns in this saga, as MPs sharpen speeches and pollsters track the mood swing. Another player steps from the wings, staff who served the late Queen, ready to spill private memories if called before a select committee. Their testimony, if aired, could scorch reputations on both continents, and that revelation storm is already rumbling just beyond the palace gates. They served her tea at 7 sharp, carried corgis down back staircases, and memorized every preference from lamp wattage to hymn tempo. Yet for all their quiet devotion, the late Queen's closest household staff were also her unblinking witnesses. Until now, they have obeyed the iron rule of royal discretion. But whispers from the royal muse say a handful are prepared to testify if a parliamentary committee convenes over the Sussex crisis. One former footman, now settled in the Shires, has already drafted a statement describing the night Harry allegedly phoned the Queen and launched into a 10-minute tirade about wedding protocol. Another, a dresser who oversaw jewels and brooches, claims the monarch confided her dread that financial scorched earth might be the only language her grandson would heed. These recollections were meant for family archives, yet lawmakers believe first-hand accounts could justify swift legislative teeth. A retired lady-in-waiting moved by a sense of legacy has gone further. She preserved a handwritten note the Queen penned after that tumultuous call, 3 neat sentences folded into her diary, never intended for daylight. Insiders say the contents are restrained but devastating, expressing sorrow that duty may one day demand measures I abhor. If summoned, she intends to present the note, sealing the monarch's original misgivings into the public record. Palace legal minds blanch at the prospect. Once such testimony enters Hansard, the codicil's moral footing hardens into granite. Meanwhile, courtiers still in service work through moral quicksand. The king's private secretaries have quietly warned staff not to volunteer evidence without clearance. Yet loyalty to the sovereign runs parallel to loyalty to his mother's memory. One groom summed it up in a midnight text to a colleague: "We kept her confidences, but Parliament guards the realm." The tension between tradition and accountability crackles like static in every corridor. Word of these potential witnesses has rocketed across the Atlantic. Meghan's crisis team fears a narrative they cannot spin. The Queen's own household painting Harry and Meghan as architects of their exile. They are already drafting counterstatements questioning selective recollections and second-hand anecdotes, but they know that doubting palace stalwarts risks public backlash. After all, these are the faces Britain trusted to steady its most beloved figure until her final breath. Yet even as testimony looms, another ticking clock echoes through the palace. Somewhere in Clarence House rests a sealed envelope addressed simply to "my dear grandson." Rumor insists the Queen wrote it in her final weeks, a farewell that might bless or chastise depending on Harry's path. No one outside the monarch's private desk circle has read the words, but aides believe King Charles intends to hand it to William at the precise moment Harry's next move becomes clear. If opened, the letter could either soften hearts or hammer the last nail in the Sussex trust. And while that envelope waits in silence, lawyers finalize a punitive timeline, and streaming producers circle for reaction shots, the codicil's detonator ticks ever closer. Inside the Privy Purse office, the mood has shifted from wary to wired, every document stamped and restamped, each page slid into fireproof folders marked with the codename Snowdrop. Staff call it the countdown board, a double-door cabinet plastered with dates, red flags, and Sussex media rumors cross-referenced against legal trigger points. Dead center glows a simple phrase in midnight blue marker: "One more strike." That is the metric now. No longer debate, no longer hope. One more broadcast, book chapter, or lawsuit, and the codicil proceeds from drafted to deployed. The attorneys have mapped the detonation sequence to the day. At dawn, the trust's escrow agent receives the sealed directive. By noon, bank instructions cascade through encrypted channels, moving blue-chip holdings into William's children's names and charitable partitions. By dusk, a notarial notice lands on the Sussex legal desk, confirming the vault is closed. The mechanism leaves no window for injunctions. Financial barricades spring up faster than any West Coast filing can cross the Atlantic. A senior solicitor boasts it is the Fort Knox of estate maneuvers. Your lordship can hear the locks click from Scotland. Meanwhile, Harry's circle has urged radio silence, praying the fuse never lights, yet events conspire to test that resolve. Spotify developers leak that a new Sussex-branded podcast trailer sits in their backend, awaiting only Meghan's final voiceover. The series, tentatively titled Healing the Narrative, reportedly features unreleased audio of Harry dissecting ancestral neglect. Palace radar shrieks. If that clip drops, cabinet room lawyers agree the trust must activate within 24 hours, no matter the fallout. Adding urgency, paparazzi lenses capture a Netflix film crew entering the Sussex estate with boom mics and archival binders, visual proof that a legacy project marches ahead. Inside the palace, aides exchange clipped looks. The Sussexes may be daring the monarchy to strike. One equerry mutters that Harry has started walking with matches near a powder keg. In private conversation, Charles confides to the Archbishop of Canterbury that his heart feels sawn in halves, but he cannot flinch. William stays colder. Friends say he has moved the contingency dossier into a personal safe ready for immediate court disclosure if his father's will faces challenge. Catherine, normally balm in these storms, tells confidantes she prays for Harry but prepares for the worst. The timeline is now public pressure sensitive. Should polls climb one more notch, peers vow to table the titles bill within 48 hours. If Parliament convenes, testimonies flow. The taped memories of loyal staff roll like newsreel. And looming over it all, that sealed envelope from the late Queen waits, an emotional EMP that could freeze Harry in place or blast public anguish to fever pitch. Everything depends on the Sussexes' next breath, next upload, next legal motion. And with the board ticking, the palace braces because the very moment narrative trumps diplomacy. Snowdrop shifts from ink on parchment to irrevocable reality. One imagined future unfurls like a soft-focused dream. Harry slips quietly through a side gate at Windsor on a misty morning. No cameras, just the crunch of gravel under cautious steps. He passes through the bronze doors, finds Charles alone in the green drawing room, and offers an unvarnished apology. No co-author, no recording device, only eye contact that stings with regret. In that timeline, the codicil stays folded, the trust remains elastic, and a modest share of Lancaster income one day funds Archie's postgraduate research or Lilibet's first humanitarian tour. Parliament shelves its bill, headlines breathe easier, and the late Queen's sealed letter is opened in privacy, a benediction rather than a rebuke. William, still wary, lets distance shrink over seasons rather than decades, and historians write that reconciliation, though fragile, won the day. The second future crackles with flashbulbs. Meghan's podcast drops without warning, her voice polished, her guests ready to dissect royal silencing. Within hours, #financial walls trends worldwide, and commentators split into warring camps. Westminster roars to life. Marcus Doyle strides into the chamber waving donor receipts. Lords fast-track the title's deprivation bill, and the word Sussex dissolves into mere geography. In Monteceto, process servers deliver notice. Inheritance redirected. Codicil activated. Trust locked. Netflix rolls cameras as Harry slumps against a kitchen counter, reading a legal letter thicker than a novel. He phones London. The line goes to voicemail. Across the Atlantic, William unlocks his safe, places the contingency dossier on a mahogany desk, and signs a cover note that ends with the stark phrase, "Duty fulfilled." Later that night, Charles gazes at the illuminated chapel window, holding the envelope his mother addressed to "my dear grandson," unsure whether sending it now would heal or shatter. The monarchy survives, but a branch is cauterized, not pruned. Sources close to both palaces admit the scale could tilt either way with a single decision. One upload, one legal filing, one private olive branch offered or refused. The codicil waits, mute yet merciless, like a drawn curtain ready to fall. Parliament's draft bill sits ribbon-bound, lacking only a moment and a mandate. And the Queen's letter, perhaps the most personal weapon of all, remains sealed, an unopened verdict measuring Harry's future against his next move. So here we stand, hearts pounding at a crossroads of royal history. Will Prince Harry pull back from the brink and preserve a slice of the crown's quiet fortune? Or will the Sussex brand gamble everything, triggering a financial exile no reconciliation can reverse? Drop your thoughts below, like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting and you won't believe what's coming next.